I'm Shadi Sharif, and this is Cyborg. For the past 3 weeks, the Iranian people have been in the midst of a revolution against the Islamic regime. And today, I'm going to be talking with one of my best friends, Shakila, about that very movement and why it's so important for us to speak up. So, Shakila, welcome to Cyborg.
Shadi, thank you for having me. I'm really glad we're doing this. This is a very important topic in the world right now, so I'm really glad we're talking about this.
I'm also so honored to be having this conversation with you. And something really special about our friendship is that Shakila and I actually met 3 years ago during the Woman Life Freedom movement at a protest. And our friendship blossomed from our mutual love for Iran and this fight for freedom. And it's now 3 years later, and the Iranian people are still fighting against the Islamic regime. Only this time it's different. The people's fight is stronger, their screams are louder, and today we just want to shine a light on what's happening. So, Shakila, maybe you could start off by giving a little background on what started the most recent protests.
Right now Iran is in a really intense moment. There are huge protests happening all over the country. And it actually started with economic problems. Iran's economy is in a crisis. Prices keep going up. The currency has lost a lot of value, and inflation is just sky high, and many people can't even afford basics anymore. So people were just frustrated, I guess, and that frustration exploded into protests.
Right. So the initial spark of the protest was people coming out because of economic turmoil and not being able to afford even basic needs like food. But something really important that I want to highlight is oftentimes when we talk about economic instability, people point the finger at the Western world and they blame sanctions for the economic crisis that's happening in Iran. But I really want to emphasize that the reason Iranians are experiencing economic hardship is not just because of Western sanctions. Iran has one of the largest reserves of oil, and the Islamic regime sells this oil to many countries, including Russia and China. And so they make billions of dollars in profits from these sales. However, they don't use that money to help the people of Iran. They use this money to enrich their own corrupt clerics and senior officials, and also to pay and fund proxy terrorist groups throughout the region. But the reason that people have stayed in the streets and are continuing to protest is not just because of economic unrest. So, what's the real deeper reason?
It's not just about money or politics. These protests have turned into a much bigger fight for freedom and basic human rights. Um, the government is, like always, responding with brutal violence. They've killed thousands of people. They've even shut down the internet to stop people from communicating. So, this is a real fight for survival and dignity, and the people are just risking everything to be heard.
Their bravery is truly unimaginable. And like you're saying, people are in the streets not just because of economic unrest, but because of the day to day realities that they've been experiencing for 47 years, living under extreme terrorism and oppression. And I just want to list a few of the things that are part of a day to day reality of Iranian people. So, the Islamic regime enacts gender apartheid, meaning men and women are literally segregated and treated differently by law. So, from childhood, Girls and boys are separated. They're not allowed to sit together, eat together, or play together. Girls from the age of 6 have to cover their hair and their bodies. Girls are not allowed to ride a bike. They can't sing. They can't dance. A woman cannot be a judge. And in a court of law, a woman's word is literally considered half of a man's. So that means two women have to provide testimony to be given the same weight as a single man's testimony. And that's just a few of the countless laws that exist under the Islamic regime used to oppress the women of Iran. But what's really important to remember is that it's not just the women of Iran that suffer under the Islamic regime. Everyone suffers under the Islamic regime. Why? Because there's no freedom of speech, thought, or expression. Everyone must think, believe, and act in the way that the Islamic regime deems correct. And if you don't, you are faced with the most brutal state-sanctioned violence.
Yeah, absolutely. So the government has responded with extreme violence. More than 16,000 people have been killed, including teenagers and children. Thousands have been arrested without fair trials, and hundreds or maybe thousands of them are in prison right now being tortured, and many of them are even facing execution for just, participating in protests or speaking out. And again, they have shut down the internet and social media so people can't even communicate or show the world what's actually happening in Iran. So I think their goal is to just scare everyone into silence.
Exactly. And the regime has repeatedly, throughout the years, used internet shutdowns for two main reasons. First, it stops people within Iran from being able to communicate with each other. So it's much harder for them to coalesce and to continue this movement. But the second reason that they do this, the terrifying reason that they do this, is because they are currently committing crimes against humanity. And they want to be able to do that in darkness. They don't want the outside world to know what's happening within.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think people should care because this isn't just about politics, this is about human rights. And human rights are universal. In Iran, women are punished for their hair. People are killed for speaking. And I think if the world ignores this, it just tells the regime that their abuse is acceptable. And, Iranians care because they know freedom and dignity are worth fighting for. And the rest of the world should care too. If you just say, "Oh, this isn't our problem. This isn't my country, so it's not my problem." You're basically just saying some lives matter less than others. So I think if you care about human rights, you should absolutely care about what's happening in Iran right now too.
Beautifully said. What's happening in Iran is beyond politics, parties, or sides. It's about humanity. We can't sit by and watch what's happening in silence. And I want people to truly understand the unimaginable level of brutality the Islamic regime is relinquishing onto peaceful protesters. They are literally using military grade weapons to gun down citizens. They're then going into hospitals and murdering protesters who have been wounded but are still alive. And they've even brought in foreign jihadist militia groups from Iraq and Syria to further terrorize Iranians. And on top of all of this unimaginable brutality, the regime is charging families thousands of dollars to get their loved ones' bodies back. The Islamic regime has literally declared war on its own citizens. This is a crime of epic proportion. And I know everything I've said is extremely disturbing, and it feels like such a dark time. But we must do everything in our power to help Iranians. And there's actually a lot of ways that we can help.
Yeah, so there are, like you said, a lot of ways people can help right now. One of the most powerful tools we have right now is social media. So even if you're not in Iran, you can share their stories, videos, or news to make sure the world sees what's happening.
Absolutely. And just a few years ago, I didn't think that posting on social media mattered. I'm just a regular person. I don't have a million followers. And I thought, what does it matter if I post something on my story? But during the Woman Life Freedom movement, I realized that it actually has a huge impact. Even if a person has just one follower, that one follower seeing your posts, it inspires awareness and inspires conversation. And those are the two things that Iranian people desperately need. They need people to be aware of what's happening, and they need people to keep talking about it. So simply sharing, resharing, or commenting has a massive impact. And something really important that has a massive impact is using hashtags. So there's two important hashtags right now. Hashtag Iran Revolution 2026 and hashtag Digital Blackout Iran. Using these two hashtags on any post or any share or reshare helps make the content trend. And what we've learned is that the more engagement there is on a topic, the more people in power are forced to listen and take action. And that's the reason why we want to continue bringing attention to this, because if enough people are posting, if enough of this content is trending, our elected officials are forced to listen and take action to help the Iranian people.
Yeah, just push governments and world leaders to take action. And, every voice, every post, every share makes it harder for the Islamic regime to stay silent. And it gives people hope that they're not alone. And that's what they need right now. They need to know that they're not alone. So, yeah, even something small like sharing a story online makes a difference, because silence only helps the regime, but speaking up helps the people.
You're bringing up such an important point. Our most powerful tool is our hope. When we have hope, we have the drive to keep fighting. A lot of the news coming out of Iran is full of despair, and the Islamic regime wants us to feel despair and hopeless. Why? Because when people feel hopeless, they don't see a reason in trying. They throw their arms down and they say, there's no use. That's why an act of rebellion, an act of revolution, is to remain hopeful. I am hopeful Iranians will prevail over this darkness. I am hopeful this Islamic regime will be destroyed. I am hopeful Iranians will be free.
You are absolutely right, Shadi. And, even with all this pain, I still believe in the people of Iran. I still believe in us. History shows that when people keep resisting, change eventually comes. This isn't the end of Iran's story. This is just the beginning.
Exactly. The bravery of the Iranian people is awe-inspiring to me, and I stand behind them in their fight for freedom. And I want to end this episode with a beautiful chant that the people of Iran have been saying. Natarsin, natarsin, ma hame ba ham hastim, which translates to, don't be scared, don't be scared. We're all in this together. Intro music was written by Optin Akrami. And if you're interested in the research I referenced, you can find a complete list on our website at cyborg.info.